Being an ant scientist, I just have to return to social insects for this video, and I want to combine it with an interesting question that I'm also very fascinated by. And that is, why do we have two sexes, and only two? And why do some other organisms not have any sexes, which is also called isogamy, and pretty common in unicellular organisms like these yeast? And some other species have dozens or even thousands of sexes, like some fungi. The paper I wanted to present here walks us through a highly interesting system where things are a little bit different. And it makes us think about various definitions we take for granted usually, and which is also why I really like this paper a lot. The first definition we have to take a look at is, what is a sex? And this paper considers two definitions. The first is called the functional definition, which considers the gametes, so stuff like egg and sperm or pollen. And it asks how many different types of gametes have to meet in order to make a viable offspring. The second definition is the demographic extinction definition. And this one asks which groups of organisms in a population are necessary for it to sustain and not go extinct. So if we took away one certain type and the whole population would go extinct, we would then know that this was a sex that we took away. The author says that under this definition, we only know species with either one or two sexes. So that example here with the three sexes is just hypothetical. I personally think that both of these definitions make a lot of sense and they don't seem to be that different. But they'll become important in a minute. As I said in the beginning of the video, I'm returning to ants, which are part of the social insects. And now I'll just give you a brief introduction into their mating system and life history. So first of all, pretty much all ants you see around are female workers, which are also sterile. And that is because there are three castes in social insects: the workers, who do all the work, the queens, who only lay eggs, and the males, who only mate and then die. So the life cycle of an ant, bee, or wasp colony is as follows. In the summer or the wet season, after some rain falls, the young queens, or you can also call them princesses, and the males will fly out in swarms. And then they will mate within a day or two, the males die, and the queen finds a new nest location and starts laying her eggs. So then from a single queen, the whole colony forms with sometimes millions of workers, which then produces queens and males again after one or more years, and then the cycle repeats. Sex determination also works a little bit different to what we're used to. It's not done through X and Y chromosomes like in mammals, or through the incubation temperature like in some reptiles, but instead social insect males hatch out of unfertilized eggs. So they only have one copy of the genes of their mother, and they don't have a father at all. And when the egg was fertilized, it develops into a worker or a queen. Which one of these two it is then depends on other factors like genes and how they are being fed. By the way, this system is a major reason for why these colonies work together so well, because sisters are always more closely related to one another than to their own offspring. So they would rather work for their sister princess than for their own daughter princess. And all of this life history brings us to the next definition we have to put into question. What is an organism? People often describe social insect colonies as superorganisms, because you can think of the queen and males as being the germ cells, and the workers as the somatic cells that make up the rest of the body. In most animals, a female and a male body produce female and male germ cells, which then together form a new body. In social insects, colonies make male and female reproductive individuals, which together make a new colony. So in this framework, a colony is a hermaphrodite because each colony can produce both males and females, just like snails can produce both eggs and sperm at the same time. Okay, so that is all pretty simple and boring, right? Good. So let's add another layer of complexity. This paper is not a classical paper with methods and results, but it's more a synthesis or argument paper. And it discusses whether some ants have more than two sexes. So these two species, Pogonomyrmex rugosus and Pogonomyrmex barbatus, are special. By the way, I have two colonies of Pogonomyrmex rugosus in my backyard, just beneath me. And if you live in southern Arizona, you will recognize them as being the big black ants. And Pogonomyrmex barbatus also live here, but outside of towns, and I have actually worked with them a while ago. So in at least these two species, there are two genetic types, or two genetic subpopulations, and we'll call them the blue and the yellow type. Now, if a queen mates only with males of her own color, she can only produce queens and males, but no workers. So there's something in the genes that makes it impossible for a blue egg and a blue sperm together to make a worker. And the same goes for yellow, of course. And just like egg and sperm cells can't make more of themselves without first making a body, a freshly mated queen can't make more queens and males that can mate themselves without first making a proper colony with workers. So these same color colonies die before they can reproduce. On the other hand, if a queen only mates with a male of the opposite color, she can only produce workers and males, but no queens. So these colonies can survive and even reproduce just only as a male colony, which has the color of the queen. If the queen mates with both a blue and a yellow male, on the other hand, she can first produce workers with the sperm of the opposite color, and when the colony is mature, she can then produce males and queens with the sperm of her own color. So only in this case can she make another hermaphroditic colony. So to make all possible combinations of male, female, and color, you'd need these two types of colonies, with a blue queen and a yellow queen. So now let's ask, how many sexes do these species of ants have under the definitions I presented earlier? First again, the functional definition. How many different gametes are needed to make viable offspring? Since we see the colony as a superorganism, we take gametes to mean queens and males, and viable offspring to mean another hermaphroditic colony. Since we need one queen of either color and two males of the opposite colors, we need in total three types of gametes, which would be considered different sexes. But if all we had were these three types of ants, who produces the yellow males that are also needed for that? And that's where the demographic extinction definition comes in useful. We need the hermaphroditic colony of the other color to sustain the whole population. So that means we need all four combinations, so in total we have 4 sexes. Isn't that wild? And how could this evolve? And why can't parents of the same color not produce workers? What does this mean for the genetic recombination? And how does this change the relatedness patterns of conflict of interests within these colonies? I would actually really like to know the answers to all of these questions myself, but making this presentation already took up enough time, and it's also more than long enough itself. So I'll just end it here with a cliffhanger.